Get started. Here we go. All right. Well, I know there's nothing that can encourage and give you joy more than doing some English grammar. So I know this will lift your hearts, and by the end of our time, you'll be singing hallelujah. Hallelujah to the verbs. Hallelujah to
Hallelujah.
pronouns in conjunction. Praise God for conditional phrases. No, we'll just try to finish our discussion of the textual observations and go to the next step, review word studies a little bit, okay? So with that, part of this will be just a quick review of the last time we met. We're looking at textual observations, which again, you'll remember follows the structural diagram step, which we should do for all poetry. Should diagram the poems because the poems are written in a logical flow, a sequential flow. Even though it's poetic language, it's still written in an instructional form or perhaps in a form of praise, but there is a flow of thought with most poems. Some poems are not. There's a few that wouldn't have this structure, but most poems do. They'll have distinct stanzas with a particular point in each stanza, and then even within the stanza, there's structure. And so the structural diagram is done to help show that structure, and then the textual observations are the follow-up step. Now for epistles, there's like 10 or 11 textual observations that we encourage you to make, but for poetry, there's just, I think, 5 that we focus our attention on. We've already spent a lot of time on the verbs, looking at what all the verbs that you find within the poem and identifying the tense and the mood and the voice. And we did that for Psalm 128 last time we met. And then the second textual observation we want to look for is pronouns. And we talked, I think, a little bit last time about that as well, the importance of identifying those pronouns and what person it is, that is first, second, or third person, how many, is it singular or plural, and then finally, what does the pronoun refer to? And that can be very important. We looked at, I think, an example in Philemon last time, the importance of understanding who the pronoun refers to. Conjunctions, again, all conjunctions are important, and it's important to remember if they're coordinating or subordinating, because remember, coordinating connect 2 grammatically equal ideas, and subordinating introduces a dependent clause that modifies some other word in a sentence. So if you have a subordinating conjunction, you will never have an independent clause. It will always be dependent. Then we identified conditional clauses, which present a condition to the action. So they're connected to the verbs, and what they do is provide a condition to the verb. And usually they begin with if, or as Alan pointed out last time, the word unless is a conditional word. And then there's a few others, so long as, provided that, on the condition that. But usually if is the most common, sometimes unless. And in poetry, one of the challenges with this is that you may not often see the word if. Sometimes, remember, because of ellipsis, certain words are left out, even and usually conjunctions are left out. And so we have to understand the flow of the poem in order to see that. It's not common, but every so often we have to pay attention to that. And then finally, look for purpose or result statements. Those statements that follow words such as for, or because, or in order that, so that, when, thus, therefore, so. These are statements that indicate a result of an action, or the purpose of an action, or the means, the way that an action is accomplished. All right. So what we like to do is, after doing the diagram, look for these 5 specific grammatical parts of grammar, parts of speech, in order to further examine the poem. And again, all this is meant to do is just to help us examine the poem from another point of view and hopefully perhaps unearth or help us discover something that we may not have seen before. All right, that's really the focus of this step. And again, in understanding what an author means, we have to remember he uses grammar. He uses the rules of grammar in his own language, in the language that he writes in. And so we need to understand that grammar as well. That's why we've spent so much time dealing with it, because it is an important piece. And so with that, what I'd like to do is now just have us go back to Psalm 128, and just as an example, we'll go through this together, making textual observations. So I'm going to ask Brother Brillo if he could read Psalm 128 for us, and then we will go through the textual observations just as an example for us. All right. So Brillo, can you read that for us? Oop. Can't hear you very well. Is your microphone on? I know you're not muted, but your mic's not working. Let me, I'll ask Pastor Arn to do that. Maybe you could figure out what's wrong with your microphone there. Pastor Arn, can you go ahead and read this?
Psalm 128, New American Standard Bible, a song of ascents. Verse 1, how blessed is everyone who fears the Lord, who walks in his ways. Verse 2, when you shall eat of the fruit of your hands, you will be happy in it, will be well with you. Verse 3, your wife shall be like a fruitful vine within your house, your children like olive plants around your table. Verse 4, behold, for thus shall the man be blessed who fears the Lord. Verse 5, the Lord bless you from Zion, and may you see the prosperity of Jerusalem all the days of your life. Last verse, indeed, may you see your children's children. Peace be upon Israel.
Great, thank you. Okay, so last time we got together, we did already go through this poem looking for the verb. So all I did is just put down what we found last time. So we're not going to do it again since we already did it. But we noticed that essentially almost all of the verbs were in the indicative mood, all right, except for a couple of examples. And almost all of the verbs were present tense or future tense, all right? And then most were active. In fact, I think all of them except one was active. So we saw that really this idea of the future tense was connected to what God had said would happen for the man who fears the Lord. And then all the present tense verbs were indicating what was taking place at that time. And also too, we noticed that the subjunctive mood was in the last couple of verses because that was in the form of a prayer. So it was a request to the Lord, whereas the indicative and in one case imperative mood was in verses 1 to 4 because those were all statements of fact, right? And so we finished that step, and then we were going to move on now to the next step, which is pronouns. And here's where I'm going to ask each of you, I'll give each of you a verse so you can help identify the pronouns. So Kazot, we'll start with you. Just take verse 1 and identify for us all the pronouns you see in verse 1.
Verse 1, everyone.
Okay, good. Everyone.
Who.
Who.
His.
Okay, who. Yeah, is the verb there. Oh, his, sorry, his, yes.
His.
And then we have another who. Okay, good. Now, the who is called a relative pronoun. We already looked at that as a connector word. And that let's see, how can we do this? Let's do it this way. All right, so we have everyone.
Refers to all who fear the Lord.
Yes, good. Refers to all who fears the Lord. All right, and then who refers to oh, you're muted, Kazo.
Also refers to who fears the Lord.
Yeah,
Lines 1 and 2.
technically refers to everyone, right? That's specifically who's, but then yeah, we know that everyone is those who fear the Lord. Okay, and then we have his.
In line 2, it refers to the Lord.
Yes, refers to the Lord. And his is, we would say, third person, right? And singular. Okay, remember, for persons, we have the first person is, I, we, us, myself, our, right? Second person pronouns would be you, yourself. And then third person would be ones like
We.
they,
them.
he, she, them, himself, herself. Okay. So good. All right. Great job. All right, Noor, I'm going to ask you to do verse 2 here.
First to pronoun you, then another you there, then you, all of them. Yours, your hand, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it's all you or your. So the question here is, who is this referring to? All right, it's second person, but who does it refer to?
The one who fears the Lord.
Well, yeah, that.
No.
But notice in the first verse, it's third person. So why didn't he say when he shall eat of the fruit of his hands? Notice he changes it, doesn't he?
Yeah.
There's a change here. We would expect the author to use he or him, right? Or his. But notice he changes it to you. It changes from third person to second person. Why do you think the author did that? And this, Nor, you can answer, or if anybody else has an idea.
He's referring to the reader.
Referring to whom?
To the reader of the psalm.
I'm sorry, leader, you say, of the psalm? Did I
The
say
reader,
that right?
the reader. The reader, Pastor, the reader.
Oh, reader,
The one
sorry,
who-
reader. Sorry, I thought I heard leader. Yes, the reader of the psalm. Yeah, notice how it now becomes even more directed. In the first verse, it's general. In the second verse, he's now addressing a specific person or group of people, isn't he? And who is that?
The first one, to my understanding, the first was kind of invitation, a call. But the second is for those who really responded.
Yeah, he's indicating he moves to the second person. He's addressing a specific person or group of people. And actually, in this case, we find out who that is in the next verse. All right. In this case, he changes the pronoun and in the next verse, we get a better idea of who specifically he's speaking to. The first verse sounds pretty general, right? Everyone who fears the Lord is blessed. But then in verse 2, he seems to narrow his focus to a particular group of people, doesn't he? And we don't know, it's, yes, the reader, but is it every reader or is it a specific group within those reading this poem or singing it? Okay.
Specific group.
Notice verse 3.
Oh,
Okay, Alan, I'll have you do verse 3.
Your wife shall be like a fruitful vine within your house, your children like olive plants around your table. So pronoun, your,
Yeah, your
wife.
Your house.
Yeah, no, your is pretty much
your,
the only pronoun
your.
here, right?
Your first your.
Okay, and that your refers back to
the same person in verse 2.
you in verse 2.
That-
But now notice we are given some indication now of who the specific audience is. In verse 3, who is it?
The true believers.
Okay, but from what? It's even part of a sub group of that. Right in the first line.
Your wife.
Yeah, your wife. Who does that tell us this psalm is directed towards? Specifically, or these two verses.
Psalm 128, who is the writer?
Who is the specific audience?
The reader
The person
of the
who's
psalm.
the reader, the person who's walking in the ways
Yeah, it's
of
the
Lord,
reader.
fears the Lord.
The reader who fears the Lord. Okay, but there's even a greater, your wife. Who has a wife?
Those husbands.
Husbands. Right? Specifically,
Yeah.
all right, husbands. And look at the second part, your children.
Father.
Fathers. Bingo. All right, this is why paying attention to pronouns matters. He makes a general statement in verse 1. Everyone who fears the Lord is blessed. Okay, that's true. But in this particular psalm, the psalmist has chosen to direct his attention specifically to husbands and fathers, specifically to men who have wives and children. Okay? That's his particular audience. All right? So he doesn't keep it general. All right? He directs it to a specific group, and that group is a group that has a wife or children. All right? Now, there are principles in this psalm that would apply to everyone. All right? In fact, the first verse tells us that. Everyone who fears the Lord is blessed. Okay? But in this psalm, the author wants to address fathers and husbands in order to show them a particular way they are blessed when they fear the Lord. You see that?
Praise the Lord.
So this psalm, actually, I preached this psalm on Father's Day. I've preached it to men's groups. This psalm is specifically directed to men. And even more particularly directed to husbands and fathers, though it also would apply to young men who plan on getting married someday or having children, right? There are principles for them as well. And again, the general principle of everyone who fears the Lord is blessed, that applies to everybody. But here in this psalm, if you're preaching this psalm, you want to make sure you recognize that it really is aimed specifically at men who are married, men who have children. You see that? And this we identify this because we're paying attention to pronouns. There's another interesting one. I think one of you may have this psalm. Here, let me share the whole page. All right, Psalm 2. There's an interesting transition in pronouns here in this psalm. Notice in the beginning, why are the nations in an uproar? The people's devising a vain thing. Kings of the earth take their stand against the Lord, against his third person anointed. Whoops, sorry about that. Let us, so now notice he's quoting the nations. Let us tear their fetters apart and cast away their cords from us. Okay, who is the there? The Lord and his anointed. Who is the us? Well, it's the speaker, and the speaker is the kings of the earth. Now, look at verse 4. It switches to third person. He who sits in the heavens laugh. Who's that? That refers to the Lord. He will speak to them in his anger and terrify them. Who's the them? The nations. Saying, now God's going to speak. As for me, I have installed my king upon Zion, my holy mountain. See that? Now we know the first person pronoun tells us the Lord's speaking here. It's not the psalmist anymore. He's quoting from Yahweh. But then notice the second, verse 7, I'm sorry. I, still speaking, this is God speaking, first person, will tell the decree of the Lord. And then, what? Wait a minute. There's a switch back. He said to me, you are my son. Well, wait a minute. Someone else is speaking here in verse 7. Because notice it said, he said to me. Well, who's the he? Well, it refers to the Lord. Well, wait a minute. I thought it was the Lord talking. It was in verse 6, but not in verse 7. Verse 7, it is the Lord's Son speaking. Because the Lord said to me, you are my son. So it's the Son who is speaking in verse 7, and he's quoting from the Father. By the way, brothers, if anyone says there's no evidence of the Trinity in the Old Testament, they would be wrong. Verse 7 is an example, at least of recognizing that the Yahweh has a son. Now, some say, oh, well, that's speaking of that God referred to the kings of Israel as sons. Well, once in a while, he called David his son. But here, we know this isn't David because of what comes at the end of the poem. But notice in this case, Yahweh says, or the son of Yahweh is saying here that Yahweh said to him, said to me, you are my son, today I've begotten you. All right, so we won't do the whole psalm, but this is another example where you really want to pay attention to pronouns. It tells you who is speaking, who they're referring to, and otherwise you'll misinterpret the psalm, especially Psalm 2. You've got to recognize there's actually 3 speakers in this psalm. There's the psalmist, there's Yahweh, and there's Yahweh's son. All 3 of them speak in this psalm. And the only way to know who's speaking is to pay attention to pronouns. All right. Any questions on that? Does that make sense, or did I just confuse you guys?
It makes sense.
It really makes sense.
Hallelujah.
I think this Psalm 2 is a great example of the importance of paying attention to pronouns in the Psalms. But even Psalm 128, right? We see it here. We need to pay attention because there's a change in pronoun, and it's not clear who that pronoun is, obviously we'd say, well, it's the reader, because it's saying you now, you the reader, but it's a specific group within those reading or singing, actually, in this case, right? Because notice this psalm is a song of ascent. So this is a song that was sung by the Hebrew pilgrims as they approached Jerusalem during one of the 3 annual feasts, okay? And as well in the temple when they arrived, they would sing. So this was a song that was meant to be sung, and here the song is being sung to specifically the husbands and fathers. And understanding this, brothers, can help you even as you describe the background of this psalm. This psalm was a song that, remember, when people traveled to Israel during the 3 annual feasts, they would travel in groups, right, in caravans. We see an example of that in Luke chapter 2, when Mary and Joseph traveled to Jerusalem for one of the annual feasts, and they had Jesus with them. Remember that? And then when they went back to their home, Jesus stayed at the temple, and it said they didn't realize he was gone for 2 days. Well, how would you not know if your son is with you? Well, if you were traveling in a large group, it'd be very easy to assume, oh, he's with his cousins, right? Or something like that. So, and if you're in a large group, you wouldn't necessarily know, see everybody right away. If it was just Mary and Joseph and, their family, then of course they would have known right away Jesus wasn't with them. But because they traveled in a large caravan, they didn't notice that he was gone. And so people would often travel in caravans for safety and things like that. So Psalm 128, you can picture the scene as as groups of people, caravans were traveling through Jerusalem, and they're going up the hill, ascending to the temple. They'd be singing these songs, and they'd be singing these songs in a group, in a family, within families, groups of families, men, women, children. And so some of the songs were addressed specifically to, this one was addressed specifically to the fathers, to the husbands, as they would be singing as they're going up the mountain. And how do we know that? Because of verse 3, your wife, your children. So the you here is husbands and fathers in particular. So the psalmist presents a general principle. How blessed is everyone who fears the Lord. And then he says, now I want to aim the rest of my psalm to a specific group. That is to husbands and fathers, to you men. If you fear the Lord, when you shall eat of the fruit of your hands, men, you'll be happy and it will be well with you. Your wife, men, will be like a fruitful vine within your house, your children like olive plants. You see that? And then look at verse 4. Thus shall the man be blessed who fears the Lord. Well, there you go. There's an explicit statement. This is not mankind. This is specifically directed to men. Okay? The who here refers to men, specifically husbands and fathers, because of verse 3. Follow me? Questions on that? So this is why we do this step looking at pronouns, because they can often help us see things that maybe weren't as obvious before. We want to know, who is the passage addressed to? Who is the passage speaking of? Who is speaking in the passage? All right, those are all, as we found in Psalm 2, those are all important questions. Otherwise, you'll misunderstand what is being said within the psalm. All right, let's go to, let's see. Who hasn't? Nor, we'll come back to you, because you only had to do one pronoun in that one verse. So why don't you go ahead and, can you do verse 5, Brother Nor?
Verse 5, pronoun. The Lord bless you, and is you there. And may you See the prosperity of the or of your life, your life.
There you go. So they're all you and your. And who
Yeah.
does this refer to?
The same person who fear the Lord in the husband and the father.
Yes. Specifically to the man who is husband and father. Okay.
Yeah.
So verse 5, and we could say, I'll just throw in verse 6 because verse 6 has the same, you and your. Verse 5 and 6 are still directed towards fathers and husbands. All right, because of the use of you and your. So this doesn't mean that you know, only husbands and fathers, may the Lord only bless husbands and fathers and not women, not children, or single people. This doesn't say that at all, but for this particular psalm, the audience, the specific audience is husbands and fathers. They're the primary audience, we could say. All right. And so that continues in verses 5 and 6. So keep that in mind. If you're preaching a psalm, you want to make sure you know who the specific audience is, who's speaking within the psalm, who each of the pronouns refers to. That will help you then to best understand what is being said here. So verses 5 and 6 also apply to the same audience as verses 3 and 4 and 2, which is husbands and fathers in particular. Okay? Questions on that? Comments? Observations? See, aren't you feeling blessed by looking at this grammar? I mean, don't you just want to lift your arms in praise and say, hallelujah, praise God. I love pronouns. Yes, all right.
Pastor,
Yeah.
how
Art.
about verse 2? It will be well with you. Is the word it pronoun?
Yes, that is actually a pronoun. It. Good. Here it's a let's see, I lost the specific name for a pronoun. It it's not demonstrative. It is give me a minute. Unless one of you guys remembers. It.
Thing?
What kind of, it's a pronoun, and here's the subject. Let me think. It'll come to me.
Yung pronoun it refers to the fruit.
It will be well with you. No, it's a general statement. It refers to
The
you know,
blessedness.
life, circumstances, things will go well with you. But there's a specific name for it. I don't know why. I cannot remember.
Is it an article?
No, it's not article. Article would be the, a, or an. Let me see. Let me look, see if I can find it in my notes.
Ako na lang imong 200. I-type ang letter it.
All right, this is going to bug me because there's like 7 or 8 different kinds of pronouns, right? Everything in English is complicated, isn't it? There's like all these different cases and all that, like, because there's personal pronouns, there's possessive pronouns, there's relative pronouns, there's demonstrative pronouns. But I want to be helpful. Let me find the specific. All right. Okay, that indefinite, is it indefinite?
It will be.
I think it's indefinite. Everyone is indefinite. Sorry, guys. It's just bugging me. I gotta find the answer. Okay.
Yeah.
Indefinite, it is sure the result.
It's pronoun, but why? Okay, I know what I'm gonna do.
Refers to the
Oh.
things.
Is it reflexive form?
No, reflected would be like itself, himself.
Nominative.
Yeah, nominative is the case. This is not telling what kind of pronoun it is. Well, that doesn't help. Dummy pronoun.
Neuter, neuter, pastor.
Neuter is the case. Like, you know, there's masculine or feminine. So yeah, it would be neuter, meaning it's not specifically referring to a masculine or a feminine thing. Just like everyone would also be neuter because it's not specifically male or female. But like he or him, that would be male. And in this case, you would be masculine because it's referring to a man. In fact, by the way, the Hebrew identifies the gender of the pronoun. So, for example, oh, that's so. That doesn't make any sense. Fruit, yeah, yours masculine here. Why can I not find? Let me check one more place, then we'll just move on here. Oh, definitely possessed demonstrative. I would say it's an indefinite pronoun, meaning it is just refers to things in general. So that's the case here. This would be called an indefinite pronoun. Okay, like everyone, because it just refers to something.
Or subject pronoun.
Yeah, it is a subject in this case. Yeah, because it's the subject is it, and then the verb is what will be, and then well is the subject complement. Okay, so it is a subject here of this clause. It will be well with you. And here it's the it isn't referring to something in the psalm. It's just a general statement of circumstances, life, you know, things, situations will go well, that kind of thing. But yes, good observation. It is a pronoun. It's just a special class. So sorry, I didn't have the answer to you for that right away. Did that answer your question, Arn, or your comment? Good observation.
Pastor Tim?
Yeah, Noor?
Can I make my own commentary?
Yeah, sure.
To me, when it will be well with you, the man who fear the Lord, no more fight with the wife. It will be
or the kids.
or the kids.
Yeah,
Don't,
I think,
don't do that, Pastor. No?
It shall go well with you.
James is listening. He will be discouraged. He will not marry anymore.
It will be well, man. It will be well.
Yeah. And here I think in this passage, you know, in this verse, again, remembering parallelism, right? We do know that these two lines are connected, right? That's how, right, in Hebrew poetry, how parallelism works, right? The first and second lines usually have a special connection. And here, I think, notice, when you shall eat of the fruit of your hands, you will be happy, it will be well with you. You will be happy, it will be well. I think in the general sense, he's talking here, right, about our labor, the fruit of our hands, that the activity we do, the work that we do, we will be satisfied with it. So I think that it here can be recognized as generally what takes place or what happens in our labors, in our effort, in our work. Okay, that it will go well. So I think we can, in the context, connect that idea of it being connected in some way to our labor, the result of our labors, our efforts, something like that. Okay. Based on, again, the connection within the verse, that he's not just saying everything in life, but that in the context, he is referring specifically to, you know, what surrounds our efforts. And here it could be the work in the field or just our work in general. All right. He doesn't specify, he just says the fruit of your hands, which is an idiomatic expression for, you know, our efforts, our labor. Okay. And yeah, if you want to say in the home, there'll be no more fights with your wife or kids. Okay. You can make that application more. All right. Anything else? Okay, let's go to the next textual observation, which is conjunctions. And in this, we just want to identify any of the coordinating or subordinating conjunctions within the poem. All right, so I'm going to ask Brother Alex, let's go back and take a look at Psalm 128 here and see here. Let me do this. I'm going to just, let me cut and paste this. All right. So, Alan, I'm just going to have you look through the poem verse by verse and tell me if you see any conjunction. All right. We'll just start with verse 1. You see any in verse 1?
Is it me, Pastor Tim?
Yeah.
You're asking me? Okay. Conjunction.
I was asking
verse
Alex.
1?
Alex.
But
Alex, okay. Okay, Brother Alex.
sorry. Alex, do you see any in verse 1?
I already forgot what is a conjunction.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, we have the coordinating ones. That's and boy. Remember, and, nor, but, or, yet. And then subordinating. That was, I think we call them wabbits. Remember, for, when, while, after, because, I don't remember all of these. Therefore, so that, so thus, I can't remember some of the others. So just Any of those that
So,
like that, all right?
In verse 1, I don't see any. Sorry.
Yeah, none in verse 1. How about verse 2?
Verse 2, none also.
All right.
When you shall.
and
And we have and
Oh,
there.
and okay. Okay,
Right.
there's an and.
And's a coordinating.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so it's connecting. You will be happy with it will be well. Okay, because remember, coordinating connects two grammatically equal words, clauses, or phrases. And here it's connecting two independent clauses. All right, any others, Alex, in verse 2?
Verse 2, I don't think there's
There's one more that I
another.
see.
You will.
Anyone see it? Verse 2?
kay read kay kuan man preposition man.
How about this one?
Okay, when.
When
Yes,
is.
yes. Okay.
This is subordinating because it's
When.
not an amboy. All right. And it's connecting, you will be happy when. It's saying when you will be happy. When you eat the fruit of your hands, you will be happy. All right. Okay. How about Alex? I'll give you one more verse here. Do you see any in verse
Yes.
3?
You shall. No, no. I don't see any.
I don't see any in verse 3. All right. Well, let's just keep it going. I'll have you do the whole thing. Alex, how about verse 4? You see in verse 4?
None also.
Behold, 4. Actually,
Four?
in this
Okay.
4 is
Yes,
because
yes.
it's followed
4.
by the clause. So 4 actually here. And this connects the subordinating. All right. Any in verse 5?
From?
From is
From is
preposition in
none.
this case.
Okay. So the second line, end.
And good. Yep. So it's connecting. It's coordinating. And connects line 1 to line 2. Okay. 2 prayers. May the Lord bless you. May you see the prosperity. All right. I think that's it. None in verse 6. Okay, good. So here, we've already, when we did the diagram, I don't have it here to show you, but we already identified how these, how they were functioning in the sentence. But it's good to come back and take one more look to see what conjunctions are being used in the sentence. All right. And then, sorry, any questions from anybody on this before we go to the next? Okay. All right. Conditional clauses. So as we look at Psalm 128 here, as we look at it here on the right, do we see any conditional clauses? Michael, I'm going to have you answer that question. Any conditional clauses that are evident? And the first thing I would do is just look for words like if or unless.
condition.
I think there's no conditional clauses.
Yeah, I don't see any either. So we
Yeah.
just put none for this poem. You won't always find every textual observation. So in this case, yeah, no conditional clauses. All right, what I want you to do in the last step, I'm going to have all you guys do this. I'm going to give you a couple minutes and just look through, again, look through this psalm one more time. Let me make sure we've got, it's not, there we go. Look through this psalm on your own one more time. Just see if you can find any purpose or result statements. And again, just be looking for words like for, because, in order that, so that, or you may not find these conjunctions, but just look for it. Is there anything in the psalm that is the result or the consequence or the purpose of something else? Okay? So I'll give you a few minutes on your own to do that. Then we'll come together and I'll see what you found. Okay? Any questions?
Thank you.
All right, let's take another minute or two. All right. So we have in the first verse here, maybe I'll do this. Okay, so does anybody, I'll just open it up to anyone who wants to give an answer here. Did anybody find any statements here that looked like a purpose or result?
Yeah, Pastor
Consequence.
Tim, verse 2.
Verse 2, all right. What are they? What is it?
When you shall eat of the fruit of your hands, you will be happy.
Okay, so you will be happy, you're saying, is a result?
Yes, Pastor Tim. It
Yes, good.
will be well with you.
Yeah, there's two results there, right? You will be happy.
Yeah.
Verse 2, it will be well. And what are those a result of?
When you eat the fruit of your hands,
And that's, and then also it's the result of verse 1, isn't it?
yeah, verse
Yeah.
1.
So both are the ultimate result of the man who fears the Lord. Okay, good. Now notice here, though, we didn't have a so that or a because or since or any of those conjunctions. Like I said, sometimes they won't be there. So you just have to understand the flow of thought within the poem. So good job. So you will be happy, it will be well. Good. Does anybody
Will
find
it
any
make sense,
others?
Pastor Tim, if you're going to base it in the comma? Because there's comma before hands.
Oh, here?
So I think that's implied the the conjunctions are implied.
Yeah, the idea is implied. It's just
Yeah.
they weren't written explicitly. Because if it had said, how blessed is everyone who fears the Lord, who walks in his way, and then it said something like, then you will be happy and it will be well with you when you
Yeah.
eat the fruit of your hands. Like something like that. Or thus, which by the way, there is a thus later in this passage, right? There's another
Yes.
result statement. Where is that?
Verse 3.
Yeah, these are also result statements, okay? Just like verse 2 is, right? Verse 3, your wife shall be, and then verse 3, your children shall be. Again, both of these are, or all of these, I'll just say that, all are ultimate result of the man who fears the Lord, right? So verse 2 has 2 results, verse 3 has 2 results. And then notice there's a summary statement in verse 4, isn't there?
For thus shall the man be blessed.
Yeah, thus shall the man be blessed. Which man? Again, this is a result statement. Shall the man be blessed? Which man? The man who fears the Lord.
Fears the Lord.
So there's this recurring, this repetitious idea here, where we see him giving several results of the man who fears the Lord. There's 2 results in verse 3, 2 results in verse 3, and then again a summary statement in verse 4.
It's
Okay.
an inclusio.
Yeah, you're right. Verses 1 and 4 are an inclusio. Everyone who fears the Lord, how blessed is everyone who fears the Lord, thus shall be the man be blessed who fears the Lord. All right. So all this, I'll put it in another color here. All right. So yeah, that's an inclusio, which brackets the first 4 verses. And as we talked about before, the first 4 verses, the focus is on the man who fears the Lord and the results in his life. Verses 5 and 6 are a prayer related to the man who fears the Lord and the hoped for impact on the community, Jerusalem, his grandchildren, and even on the nation.
Pastor
All right,
Tim,
good. Okay,
Pastor Tim,
yeah, Kazo.
in making the summary or the result statement, can we make it a summary as the man who fears the Lord will be blessed
Yes.
in his home or in his work, something like that?
Yeah. Man who fears the Lord will be blessed. I just divided, be blessed in his work, will be blessed in his home. Yeah. That's verses 1 to 4. All right, good. Very good. Hopefully that makes sense. Any other final questions on this? Again, in this step, you finish the diagram. Now you just look for these 5 specific purpose and result statements, conditional clauses, conjunctions, pronouns, and the verbs. And again, the goal of this step is just to help, force us to look for certain things, and hopefully in that process, uncover particular insights maybe that we didn't see up to this point. Okay. And like I said, maybe for the pronouns, that may not have been something that we had noticed carefully before, but then in specifically looking at the pronouns, we realized, oh, this psalm actually is specifically addressed to a certain group of people, to husbands and fathers in this case. And that's an important insight for this particular psalm. So you can use it, even like I said, I use it. I've preached it a few times on Father's Day or to men's groups, because it really does specifically apply to them. And so you can make it very focused. Now, if you were to preach it in church to a mixed group, certainly the principles of fearing the Lord, and God's blessing. And then you could say, and here we have an illustration for husbands and fathers of how they are blessed. But certainly this would apply to all of God's people, that if we fear the Lord, that there is blessing that comes with that. It's certainly fine to preach to, anybody, but it does specifically apply to men. So next time you're speaking to a group of men, this might be a good passage to use for them, to exhort them, encourage them, challenge them.
Thank you.
And we'll keep using it for the future steps in the process. So next week, Lord willing, we'll gather. When we gather, we'll go to the next step, reviewing word studies, and then what follows that. All right. And then maybe I'll talk a little bit about the schedule, because we're now in the month of December. So my thoughts were we would take a few weeks off for the holidays for you. I know that's a busy time for everyone. So we'll gather together next week and we can talk about that a little bit as well. All right. And then maybe you will know more about all of your situations and we can discuss the future, kind of what that looks like for us. Okay.
Okay, Pastor Tim.
All right. Well, thanks for your time, brothers. Appreciate that. Have a blessed Thanksgiving Day. I know it's going to be hard for some of you with everything happening, but
Actually, Pastor Tim, there's one member of the SLT tendered his resignation already.
oh, okay.
Yeah, just informed lately. Ma'am Minnie Portich.